I moved to the city in search of a fresh start. After months of job hunting and apartment hunting, I finally found the perfect place, a quaint, old building with a "for rent" sign that looked like it had been waiting for me. The rent was surprisingly affordable for the area, and the location was ideal. Little did I know that my new apartment would come with a dark and unsettling history. The day I moved in, the building seemed ordinary enough. It had an old-world charm that I found endearing. The landlord, Mr. Henley, was a grumpy old man who barely uttered a word as he handed me the keys and collected the first month's rent. I chalked it up to his age and continued with the move-in process. My apartment was on the 4th floor, tucked away in the far corner of the building. It was a one-bedroom unit with high ceilings, creaky wooden floors, and large windows that let in an abundance of natural light. As I began to unpack my belongings, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The unease was subtle at first, but it grew stronger with each passing day. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard faint whispers coming from the walls. At first, I dismissed them as mere echoes of the city outside. But as the days went by, the whispers grew louder and more distinct. They sounded like hushed conversations, as though people were conspiring in the walls of my apartment. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unsettling. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. I assumed it was a neighbor, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw no one. The footsteps continued, pacing back and forth, and then abruptly stopped. I cautiously opened the door, only to find an empty hallway bathed in dim, flickering light. The strange occurrences continued to escalate. Objects in my apartment moved on their own, and I would find them in different places than where I left them. My sleep was plagued by nightmarish visions, and I often woke up to find scratches on my arms and legs. The whispers grew louder, and I could now discern snippets of conversation. They spoke of a tragedy that had befallen a previous tenant, a woman who had lived in my apartment. Desperate for answers, I decided to do some research. I went to the local library and dug through old newspapers and archives. It didn't take long before I stumbled upon a chilling discovery. A woman named Eleanor Wilkins had lived in my apartment back in the 1940s. She had mysteriously vanished without a trace, and her disappearance had never been solved. Intrigued and disturbed by this revelation, I delved deeper into Eleanor's story. She had been a recluse, rarely seen outside her apartment. According to the few neighbors who remembered her, she was often heard talking to herself and would become increasingly agitated as time went on. The night she disappeared, several residents reported hearing frantic screams coming from her apartment, followed by an eerie silence. I couldn't help but draw parallels between Eleanor's experience and my own. The whispers in the walls, the footsteps, and the feeling of being watched all seemed eerily familiar. I had to find out what had happened to Eleanor. One evening, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, I decided to try a desperate experiment. I lit a few candles and placed them in a circle on the floor. I sat in the center, closed my eyes, and began to speak aloud. I addressed Eleanor, inviting her to communicate with me, hoping to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. I shivered, but I didn't give up. I relit the candles and continued to speak, pleading with whatever presence inhabited the apartment. Suddenly, the room grew ice-cold, and I felt a presence beside me. I dared to open my eyes and saw a spectral figure standing there, a woman with hollow eyes and a twisted, sorrowful expression. It was Eleanor, or at least her ghost. She spoke in a voice that seemed to come from the depths of despair. She told me her story, of how she had been tormented by an unseen force that drove her to madness. She had tried to escape it, but it had consumed her in the end. Eleanor's ghost implored me to leave the apartment before it was too late, before the same fate befell me. Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened to her tragic tale. I knew I had to heed her warning. I packed my belongings and left that accursed apartment, never looking back. I never saw Mr. Henley again, and I didn't care to. The darkness that had haunted that place was something I could never forget. To this day, I wonder what malevolent force had taken residence in that old building, and whether Eleanor's spirit still lingers there, trapped in an eternal nightmare. I warn anyone who considers renting that apartment, beware the whispers in the walls, for they may be the harbinger of a horror you cannot escape.